Hi, this is John Wood. I'm at East Rosebud Fly and Tackle in Billings, Montana. Today I'm going to tie for you a fly known as Juan's Ice Emerger. It's a fly that was designed by, you probably know him on social media as Hopper Juan Ramirez. It's got one little technique that's a little bit tricky, and I wanted to try to demonstrate that for you today. So I've started my thread a little ways back from the hook eye, and I run up onto the bend, and you can see the hook is sat in the vise just a little bit crooked so that the butt end of it is tilted upward. That's so we can work with our microfivets. I've got two microfivets, evened up the ends, and I'm going to take a couple of loose thread wraps from where I'm sitting there. Make sure that those fivets are right up on top of the hook shank, and then just give them a little pull to set the length. Now I want these tails pretty long on this fly, about as long as the entire hook length. Now I'm going to give it a couple more wraps, holding the fivets in place so that they don't walk on me. When I get it to where I want, I'm going to bring the thread down under the fivets, pull it nice and snug. I'm using my pinky nail to hold that thread so it doesn't slide back around the bend, and then bring the thread up through the fivets. And this is a little bit of a tricky operation here. Once you've practiced it and you get it just right, you'll see you can get those fivets to split. And I want them not quite at about 45-degree angle to each other. Now I'm just going to wrap the butt of the fivets back up to the hook to where we started the thread. There we go. Now I'm going to change the angle of the hook, get it level at the front of the shank, clip that off. Get a couple of thread wraps there. Now I have got a small amber ultra wire. We're going to use that as a rib. Start that here. I'm going to run that on my side of the hook all the way down to just in front of where we anchored the tail fivets. I don't want to go all the way back because it'll interfere with the tilt of the fivets, and you'll end up skewing them. Although I'm going to show you a way to fix that if you happen to do it, so you don't end up having to retie the entire fly. Bring that up. I'm going to tilt this so I can see my wraps a little better. And I want to get 5 visible wraps, and then on the 6th one, I've got my thread hanging. I'm coming around in front of the thread, and then I pull the wire back and bring the thread in front of the wire, and then go behind, in front, behind, in front. And that locks that wire down so that I can easily helicopter it right off to break it. Now I've got about 12, 14 Fluoro-fiber fibers in brown. And I've trimmed the ends even. I'm going to catch them in right there behind the eye of the hook, maybe. Slide that back, and then I'm going to wrap them back to what is going to end up being our thorax. And bring that thread back to the middle of the thorax. And now for this part of the operation, this is the tricky part. We're going to make a stacked dubbing indicator on this fly, and it's not so much for you to see as a fisherman, but for the fish to see. It gives them something to target. And we're using a UV light olive ice dub, and I've got quite a good amount, and I'm going to spread it on there. And first I want to get it twisted on there just like we normally would with a nice little kind of a dubbing rope coloring the thread. But here's where we do something a little different. I'm going to keep spinning that, and I'm going to push it up towards the hook shank, and I'm going to stack it. Bring it back down just a hair. I turn the hook upside down, get that stack. Now I'm gonna, it's maybe hard to see, but I'm gonna pinch the dubbing, bring the thread around, and it's between my fingers, lay it against the bottom of the thorax tightly, and then pull on it, and you can see what happened. It locked that ball of dubbing to the top of the hook shank. Now, without releasing any pressure, I'm going to bring the thread around in front, or in back, in front, and do that a couple of times, and that locks that little dubbing ball right up on top. You're going to have some strays, or at least I always do. Just clip those off. Now we're going to take a little olive Superfine and just color the thread. I don't want a lot of bulk. I could do this with thread, but this olive, this Superfine gives you just a little bit of contrast to the olive dun thread that we're using to build the thorax. You got to be careful not to get too much on there, because if you do, you'll end up, your thorax will look really, really bulky, and I don't want it to look that way. I want it to be kind of trim. So I'm going to start coming around, make a couple wraps in the back. Now I'm going to go under and over in front, and then just make figure eights. I'm doing this nice and slow so you can see exactly what I'm doing. And just kind of build that thorax to where it looks good to your eye. There we go. And then bring the thread around once you've got all the dubbing in there, make a little thread base up front. Now I'm going to take all these fluoro-fibers, split them about in half. You don't have to be exact, but you know, you don't want 3/4 of them on one side and 1/4 on the other. Try to keep them fairly even. I start with the side away from me. Just pull them forward rather snugly. Bring your thread over, and then pull on the thread and pull those straight outward away from you, and that separates them. Then do the same thing with the rest of the fibers. If I can grab them all on your side of the hook. It's not working out. There we go. All right, now I've got that. I'm going to make a couple rounds there, and as I come around, like on the 3rd or 4th round, grab all the fibers that are on your side, pull them straight back just under the ice dub ball that we made on top, make a couple wraps, then do the same thing on the other side. Build a kind of a tapered head, and you can see I've gone all the way back up against the ice dub ball. Once I've got that taper head built, I'm going to whip finish this thing off. And I want a good solid whip finish on that. 6 or 7 rounds. Clip it off. Now take all of your fluoro-fibers, pull them back, and then I like to clip them right behind the thorax. And that creates your legs. And that's your isomerger. Now, for the last little step, if you want to secure your tail completely, what I'm going to use is a little drop of Solaris, thin hard. I like it because it sets really solid. Now you want to be sure you don't have too much. So I'm going to use, since I don't have a small applicator tip, I'm going to put a little ball of it here on a paper towel. And then I'm just going to take the tiniest little bit, get those tails exactly where I want them, and then just dab a little bit, not much. If you get too much, just go ahead and take it off further up your bodkin. Hit it with a UV light, and there you go. There you have the Juan's ice emerger. That's it.